Got the thumbs up. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our regular BOCC meeting for November 15th, 2023. Agenda's been out there for a bit. We may have folks that are watching on the live stream. If so, welcome, or those that may be watching the recording afterwards. So I do ask if you are speaking either during public comment, presenting, or for those of us that forget every now and again to use the microphone so folks that are off-site can hear us as well. Before we call the meeting to order and the roll call, I'd like to invite County Manager Sean Fletcher to provide us an invocation and lead us in the pledge.
Thank you. For the word of God is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believes in the name of Jesus. Dear Lord, as we reflect on the word of God, there is a text that comes to mind today. It is found in Matthew 5:41, as it says, if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. We ask, Lord, that we are able to incorporate this into our daily lives as the message is clear, that we should do extra, we should work harder, we should be better. We ask, Lord, that you help us to do this in those areas of our lives, especially those of us who are public servants, that we do not just go 1 mile, but instead go the extra mile in everything we do, seeking excellence. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Sean. All righty, so it's 9:02. Emily, could you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Thayer. Here. Commissioner Richardson.
Here.
Commissioner Schroeder.
Here.
Thank you.
All righty, we have a quorum. First item we have is to approve the agenda before us. I don't think we have.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as published. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. So our first item of business, we have several items on consent. I'd accept a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the items on consent. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All righty. So, elected officials and staff reports. Sherry, I understand you had a tax sale yesterday.
Good morning, commissioners and citizens. Sherry Hewlett, the Elbert County Treasurer and Public Trustee. We indeed had our tax lien sale yesterday. We had a full house in here. 24 investors participated with a few extras that just viewed the sale just to see how it went. Ironically, we had 162 properties to sell, which is exactly the same number that we had last year. So that was interesting. We sold everything but one. One of those properties ended up on the list, but was actually in the treasurer's deed process, so we pulled that property. So there were no properties left over. We offered at sale $240,837.29 in taxes. Our premiums were $20,418. So the total that we brought in at sale was $261,196.89, which is about $6,400 more in premiums than last year. So I know we can probably make a little bit more money online, but we really had a good time and we really enjoyed the live sale. So staying consistent with that. So that puts us at about 99.9% collected in taxes. So that's not collected are probably some personal property, mobile homes, those properties that may be in bankruptcy. Todd Natale from Semla with Double Diamond Auction. He auctioneered the auction and he brought Ed Kovitz with him. I don't know if you remember, or the citizens remember, he was involved in a horrible car accident a year ago and the doctors predicted he wouldn't make it. And we were so blessed to have him there because he's been a big part of our sale. And he auctioned off about a quarter of the sale towards the end, and he did an amazing job. You would never have thought he was in an accident. So we're hopeful. He's not going to do this full time, but hopefully moving forward, he'll still come and help Todd. So it was a really kind of emotional day just to have him there. So Todd did an excellent job as well. And I must thank my staff, Michelle Ingersoll and Beth Barnes, because without them I couldn't do what I do, and they did an amazing job, and we balanced and everything went really smooth. So in comparison to last year, as I stated earlier, we had 162 properties. We did offer more taxes this year than we did last year, so that kind of helps in the premium bidding on that. So all in all, it was a good day. We sold everything and collected everything we could. So, you have any questions?
Do you have any questions or comments? Just for the folks that aren't familiar with the process, when somebody buys a tax lien, what then?
What happens next?
Yeah.
So basically, they retain a certificate of purchase, is what it's called. And so they earn 15% interest. That's what the interest rate was this year. I forgot to mention that, but it's at 15%. So we do our normal notifications, billing at the first of the year. So at the end of January, we will send out the tax notices to the property owner. We'll go through our deadlines, the two half payments and then the full payment due in the end of April. If the property owner does not pay by July, I'll send out a delinquent notice. If they still don't pay, in August, those folks that were the successful bidder at the auction will get a letter from us stating, hey, it's time for you can pay these taxes onto your certificate. So that will go on each year after that until we get into that fourth year. And then the investor can apply for the treasurer's deed at that time. And that's a $400 fee. In the meantime, the property owner can still redeem and pay those taxes. Once that happens, the investor, they receive a check from us, and it's just the amount of taxes plus the interest. They don't get their premium money back at all. So they don't earn interest on that premium. So I always give a stern warning at the beginning of the sale. Be careful, because if the property goes to sale for $1,000 and you bid $1,500, you may not get your $500 back. So that's basically how it works. I do have that on my website. There's a document, tax sale procedures. It's pretty informative if anybody listening wants to read that or give us a call. So, okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
And I believe there was an election last week. So.
Good morning, Commissioners. Rhonda Braun, Elbert County Clerk and Recorder. And before I dive into election results, I had some other things to report to you. So, as you know, the Clerk and Recorder's Office has a bunch of departments, and one of those is motor vehicle. And we had an audit, an inventory audit, and I just want to read some of the findings from that. Ryan from the state said, I wanted to make sure I highlight the increase in scoring from last year. Almost no counties have had an increase, and none have shown such a big jump. The score for Elbert County is one of the highest in the state and a clear indication of a well-run and high-level inventory program. Your diligence and attention to all aspects of inventory is appreciated by the entire inventory team. And he also had comments on the staff, the motor vehicle staff. He said the staff in Elbert County were friendly, responsive, and cooperative throughout the entire audit process. The staff was flexible with scheduling and helpful during the audit. The customer service observed in Elbert County was high quality. Employees were overheard answering questions, making suggestions, and enforcing rules, all with a pleasant manner. So I have Ashley Brazillo here, our motor vehicle manager. Just wanted to recognize her. I tried to get the other ones to come, and they said no way. So, but representing our motor vehicle department, and I'm so proud of them, and we, honestly, every time I go somewhere, I get compliments on our customer service in our motor vehicle department, and those ladies work really hard, and we just so appreciate them and just wanted to recognize their hard work.
Ashley, thank you. I mean, when people think DMV, they don't think friendly, efficient. Very good. And generally, the case studies and customer service that come out of DMVs are not positive. So you guys do a wonderful job back there. Thank you.
And it is my honor and pleasure to serve the citizens of Elbert County. We did have another election, and Elbert County citizens rocked this election. Over 53% turnout is huge for a coordinated election, and the citizens that did come in were always encouraging to our staff and election judges. I love where we are, and I love serving our citizens. So at the moment, we have until end of day today to receive our military and overseas voters. If they transmitted if they put something in the mail, we can still take those. Or if somebody had a signature discrepancy or they forgot to sign their envelope, they can sign an affidavit and get that in by the end of the day. But we have most of what we're gonna have. So we ended up with 12,239 voters at the moment out of 22,976. So that was a huge turnout, and certainly I didn't look all the way back, but for a coordinated election, that's the highest that I've seen for Elbert County. Our drop boxes continue to be our biggest place that people drop their ballots. The Elizabeth drop box had 4,470 ballots dropped in there, and the Singing Hills 3,370. So those continue to be the favorite for people to return their ballots. And I want to thank, we have our elections manager, Stephanie Ferris, and Maureen Duffy, our elections clerk here. And I just want to thank them for running an amazing election and learning a lot about Elbert County and getting to know the Elbert County citizens. They did a fabulous job. Our election judges this year, we had Tracy Ducharme, Brad Eit, Susan Schick, Chris Hernecki, Art Weber, Alan Krennick, Alessandra Navita, Debbie Kirk, Danny and Beth Wilcox, Mary Wells, Gary Aspeslaw, Diana Edstrom, Candy Putch, Dee Pepper, Patricia Creekmore, and Juan Gallegos. Want to thank them. They all contributed and did a great job with a great attitude. The Democratic and Republican parties both provided a meal for our election judges. That's always appreciated. These guys, the election judges, I try to tell them, take a break, get a rest, and they're like, no, but we can get more done. We can get more done. So they're very devoted to what they do and want to do it right. We thank the facilities department. They worked really hard to get our building ready and to get some stuff finished before the election. All the staff in the SEB, there's a couple other departments, but they get to direct voters and answer questions, and it's extra on top of the wonderful job that they do all the time. Amanda Moore supported us and helped out because sometimes we just couldn't be everywhere at one time. Emily's doing double duty, so everybody stepped in to make this election a success. I want to thank the town of Elizabeth and the Elizabeth Fire Station at Singing Hills for allowing us to have the very popular drop boxes and all their support with us on that so that the citizens had a convenient place to drop it. And thank you for the support of the commissioners. We just appreciate it.
Thank you, Rhonda. Any questions for Rhonda?
No, thanks for good work.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Good job. Alrighty, I don't believe we have any reports from staff keyed up for today that aren't on the agenda. Okay. So we'll open for citizen public comment. This is an opportunity for folks that have an issue that's not addressed on the agenda today to bring that up to the commission. Before we go to the room, Emily, my understanding is we didn't have any email comments or anybody that wanted to be called? Okay. So with that, I know some folks had signed up. Is there anybody here that, recognizing some faces, but is there anyone here that had a comment that wasn't related to the XL transmission line? Okay. With that, I'd open the floor to whoever signed up that would like to speak. If you could, just give your name, address, and try to keep your comments to about 3 minutes. So, thanks.
I'll keep it shorter than 3 minutes, I hope here. Name is Brad Ray, 17112 Highway 86. And basically the only thing I'd like to do today is to bring to the attention of the board, if they are not aware, as well as the people who are attending here, that XL Energy posted on its website on October 18th of 2023 that they had received a $100 million Department of Energy grant to boost wildfire mitigation and grid resiliency. So this is a taxpayer-funded grant, free and clear, $100 million for this mitigation effort, and to include burial of power lines. Now, doesn't say anything about us, but it does say that they were given a $100 million grant. In addition to that, they're required to get this money to put up another $140 million of their own money towards such efforts. So it seems to me that it would be a reasonable thing for the county to insist that XL Energy, when they submit their permit application for what they'd like to do to this county, include burial of those lines in that application.
Thank you.
Okay. And, you know, besides the tremendous financial damage that this does to those of us along the pathway, it's also a great risk for us and our properties and our animals. Shortly after I moved here in 2008, and I had just completed the building of our facilities, there was a fire directly across Highway 86 that started on a property that bordered on Magic Dog Ranch's Jerry Peters property. That fire consumed hundreds of acres of ground owned by Jerry, as well as John Malone, that was being leased by Robert McLean. Only because of the effort that was put in by the fire department and the fact that Highway 86 blocked its path did that not jump the road. The animals that were at, the horses that were all at Jerry's place were evacuated to my property, and we were preparing to evacuate them somewhere else. That fire was caused by something as simple as a hot wire on a fence that was started by some grass that got a little high.
Commissioners, that's 3 minutes.
So from what I understand, that was not the first one either that had started. So we can imagine what might happen with some power lines. Yeah. If I could just.
Oh, please. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Whoever would like to speak next? Bless you.
Bless you. Good morning, Commissioners. Don Gray, 16,000 Highway 86. Again, on the XL, thank you, Brad, for that information. But I'd also like to ask the county if there's any legal standing that we can ask XL to set back down with the citizens of the county and discuss the concerns of the citizens. Right now, we feel as our voice isn't being heard. They had their meetings, they checked their box, backed in their corner, didn't talk to us. Is there any legal standing through the 1041, through Mr. Price, who's the county has hired, through Mr. Greer, some legal way that we can ask them to come back and sit down and have a meeting and talk to the citizens one-on-one so that our questions can be answered? Simple question is just what Brad came up with. Are they willing to mitigate with that monies that they've been had? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. All righty. Carrie? Morning.
Carrie Giblets, 19656 Wiedemeyer Road. I just wanted to point out that there was an article in the Denver Post published November 12th, and it was about Xcel's plan for new power generation. And in this article, Robert Kenny, who is the president of Xcel Energy Colorado, was quoted as saying, "We continue to work with the community to find out what the best path forward is. Without getting into the specifics of Elbert County, our goal is to continue working with our community to find a mutually agreeable route." Other than the open house last year, where the citizens here said to go east, we'd like it placed where there are existing power transmission lines, and we were ignored. Other than the open house a few weeks ago, where Xcel couldn't or wouldn't answer our questions, told us that it was a done deal and that they would use eminent domain to take our property, are there any other ways that Xcel has been working with our community? Thanks.
Thank you, Carrie. Do we have anyone else? Ma'am?
Sunny Mills, 27310 Forest Ridge Drive. Kudos, commissioners, for developing a new water master plan with funds from the Water Conservation Board of Colorado. I understand that you're using Forsgren Associates, LRE Water, and Logan Simpson. I would like to know how the contract was awarded. What are their years of experience, and where are their headquarters? I think those things were missing from the article that I read. Getting to the power pathway, infrastructure bill means mega dollars. This kind of large investment hasn't been done for over 50 years. As a macroeconomist for U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Afghanistan District in 2007, we spent, and I tracked, $3 trillion. So much waste over the years. When I worked at the GPS experimental station, Vandenberg Space Shuttle launch site, Misawa Air Base, Yongsan Army Base, Songtan Air Base, Camp Humphreys Army Base, and Vandenberg Space and Missile Command. It wasn't fraud, it was lack of planning and knowledge. They were ill prepared for the change. They lacked the commitment that it took to make changes. Last time I demanded a 50-year cost-benefit study from Xcel. Hopefully you'll request that. You should know that by now my research has said to bury the lines, and I was so happy to hear about that today. But we'll see. I'm holding my breath. We know that burying the lines is more reliable. It's virtually maintenance-free over at least 50 years. Many companies have years of experience doing it and can take contracts from us. Burying the lines gets rid of the visual obstruction to lower property values. It greatly reduces the spread of wildfires. And remember, we have 300-year ponderosa forests are just 5 miles away from the proposed pathway. No research and development because free specifications for buried lines already exist. No constant, unrelenting buzzing to disturb herds of antelope, golden, and bald eagles and other raptor livestock. And the biggest payoff for our country is buried lines are secured from terrorist attacks.
Commissioners, that's 3 minutes.
In light of Israel and the Hamas war and the recent warnings about possible terrorist cells, we have 5 U.S. military Army bases, but they all have generators. The biggest problem is the economic loss that will be due to the power grid that once it goes down. So Why is China so heavily invested in our U.S. grid? Well, the Congress was warned by this by Homeland Security and Housing, Energy, and Commerce Subcommittee.
Only if you could
Okay.
wrap up what you have.
And-
We'll
and-
certainly be talking about this for many months to come. So.
In July 2023. Excel's answer, 5 redundant lines. That won't help. That's not what we need. Thank you very much. Barry, the Power Pathfinder.
Do we have anybody else that would wish to speak? Okay, thank you. We'll close public comment at this time. Any response or comments?
Just the comment, we still don't have an application from Excel on their power line, so it's hard for us to look you in the eye and give you an analytical answer to your comments, but your comments are well received, and something like this is a handy piece of paper to have in my desk, on my desk, not in it.
No, okay. Thank you. In terms of the Denver Post article, I often think that Excel and our citizens are talking about 2 different projects in 2 different counties. So I agree there's a disconnect there. To Don's comments, we'll look into that to see if there's an opportunity. If a forum is provided, I can't promise there'll be any listening. So, but I understand the frustration tremendously. We feel it as well. So, thank you. Excuse me, moving on to our discussion items. The first presenter we have is Mr. Rick Morgan, who is our Veteran Service Officer for the county. We do ask him in every November, as close as we can get to Veterans Day, to provide us an update on his activities and the status of veterans in the county. So Rick, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very, very much for being here. It's a tremendous honor for me to be able to serve your veterans and their families here in the county and to be able to make sure they get the benefits that they earned. And I'm glad to have a chance to tell you about how we're doing. I'm your County Veteran Service Officer, have been since 1998 now. It's an honor to serve in that way. This one-man shop provides a broad spectrum of different kinds of veteran services. Go ahead, please. Next slide. But nationwide, we're seeing a gradual decline in the number of veterans for a variety of reasons, but largely because we're seeing the passing of World War II and Korea veterans. And more recently, we're also seeing Vietnam veterans reach older ages. As the number of veterans declines over time, we're still seeing an increase in the total amount of VA expenditures, Veterans Administration expenditures, over that same period of time. Even though we're seeing that decline nationwide, the trends here in Elbert County are somewhat different. Next slide, please. Here in Elbert County, we're going to see a stable number of veterans out till about 2045, for the next 25 years, if you will. But we'll see a change in the composition of who those veterans are. As we go downstream, we're going to see a decline in total number of veterans by about 1/3 over the next 25 years, even though in Elbert County we're expecting it to stay stable at about 2,000 over that same period of time. In the last 5 years, we've already seen a decline of 5 million veterans nationwide. Today, just about a little bit more than half of all veterans are Gulf War and post-9/11 veterans. Next slide, please. But the trends in Elbert County, as I mentioned, are slightly different. Since about 2000, you'll see we saw roughly a doubling of the population of veterans here in Elbert County. But then since about 2008, relatively stable at about 2,000 or 2,200 or so here in Elbert County. That's different than our surrounding counties, which I found to be quite interesting. With the exception of Douglas County, all of the other counties that are around us, both in terms of geography, Arapahoe, Adams, Douglas, and El Paso, they're seeing a decline of about 9 to 10% in their veterans population over the last 5 years. In that same period of time in Elbert County, we saw only a 3% decrease in the number of veterans. And in terms of other counties across the state that are relatively the same population and relatively the same geographic size, that's the right-hand column you see there, Lincoln, Morgan, Routt, Teller, and Weld. We're still seeing declines in all of those similar kinds of counties, but in Elbert County, we have that much smaller decline, and we expect it to be stable at about 2,000, relatively stable for the next 25 years. If current population projections hold, of course, which is always subject to U.S. foreign policy of a variety of ways, over the next 20 years, the Elbert County population, which currently represents about 1 in 10 of your Elbert County citizens, is a veteran today. As the population expands and the veteran population remains stable, we're going to see about 1 in 20 of your Elbert County veterans, citizens, Elbert County citizens will be a veteran in 25 years, whereas today it's about 1 in 10. So that representation in the population will drop over time. Next slide, please. At the same time, the amount of money coming from the Veterans Administration into the county continues to climb. And last year, the VA spent $21 million on veterans here in Elbert County in FY22. So the number of veterans has climbed over the last 23 years, if you will, from about 900 to about 2,000, so more than double. But the VA expenditures in the county have increased almost 20 times in that same period of time, and is expected to continue to climb in the out years. Next slide, please. This is the way that $21 million breaks out in terms of expenditures for Elbert County veterans. And it's important to note that the medical portion of that, roughly $9 million, is mostly spent outside of Elbert County in the VA facilities in Aurora and clinics, nearby clinics. But the $11 and a half million, if you will, of compensation and pension, that goes directly to veterans here in Elbert County and their families. So that is an expenditure that's injected directly into the local economy and to the benefit of veterans and their families. Right now, we've got about 1,976 veterans. Again, we see that number expected to stay relatively stable over the out years. With regards to the medical expenses, medical payments were up 27% from the previous year. And in terms of the direct payments to veterans, direct payments to their families, we're up 23% from the year before. Next slide, please. We haven't seen much change in the way that those benefits break out in terms of age over time. Roughly 1/3 of our veterans are either at 70% or above, and the other 2/3 are at something below that. I'll come back and talk a little bit about the PACT Act and how that's impacted our numbers. But we're seeing a fairly stable distribution in terms of both the rating percentage of how badly affected veterans are by the disabilities that have been resulting from their military service, and the age as well has been relatively stable. Next slide, please. This is the breakout of how our wartime veterans, keep in mind that 1,541 of our Elbert County veterans are wartime veterans. The other 22%, roughly 22%, are peacetime veterans. But 4 out of 5 of your Elbert County veterans, so if you meet a veteran here in Elbert County, chances are very good that they're a wartime veteran. And that's higher than some of our adjacent counties for reasons that I can't explain. So, about 1 in 4 of our Elbert County veterans are Iraq or Afghan vets. So post 9/11 Iraq and Afghan vets. Next slide, please. So this is what keeps me busy on a day-to-day basis. We received about 750 calls, and you can see roughly 50, 60 calls per month that come in, and we help on the order of 2 or 3 dozen veterans each month. And when I say serving veterans, I mean we actually file paper with them, get them services, help them get the support that they need. Right now we have 510 active open files in the office, And in any given month, I'm seeing about 6 to 10 new cases, new files that we're doing each month, as well as typically 2 or 3 ongoing new appeals in that process. So we support the appellate process for veterans who feel that they got a bad decision. Next slide, please. So the bottom line here is things are going smoothly. We're providing cost-effective benefits to the county and your veterans and the veterans' families. The state provides a stipend to cover the office expenses of about $1,300 a month, and that's working well. I'd like to talk a little bit about the PACT Act. The PACT Act is the one that you may have heard about with regards to burn pit toxins and so forth, and also impacts Vietnam veterans for Agent Orange purposes. We've seen about 85 PACT Act claims in the last 14 months. That was passed, the PACT Act was passed in August of 22. About 85 of those, and a third of those claims were granted for compensation, but almost all of them have been granted at least 0%. So that's very important, because that means that if that veteran whose disability has been recognized ever has some debilitation in that process, it's the VA's bullet to bite forever. They will get all medical support if they have pulmonary issues in their lungs on account of burn pit exposure and so forth. Even though they may not be too bad off today, if they ever have problems in the future, it'll be forever the VA's responsibility. A third of all the claims that I'm seeing are PACT Act related, but one of the things that I'm really pleased about is that more than half of the PACT Act claims that I see are first-time claims. So we have younger veterans who are coming in, getting into the system to ensure that their disabilities are going to be served today and far out into the future. So I'm very pleased with that part of it. I'm very honored to serve as your Veteran Service Officer, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments? No, actually, those are all great numbers, and as you said, the fact that newer folks are at least getting into the system, I think, is incredibly important. And the role you served, and I could do the quick math, that's 25 years that you've been doing this. You're truly, clearly an expert in this, and as a veteran, I can tell you the systems are impenetrable and not understandable as folks are leaving the service. They're generally worried about what's their job going to be afterwards, how they're going to take care of their family. There's all sorts of issues that kind of are more top of mind when you're getting ready to retire or leave the service. And to have folks yourself here in the county to kind of pick up and help folks is incredibly important. I know there's a lot of folks out there that probably are, and it's not about leaving money on the table, but they're things that they are entitled to that they just don't know about. So I know you're well known throughout, and the veterans organizations definitely feed folks to you, but if there's anything we can do on the county side to advertise your services, I'm not trying to overload you, a couple of calls a day and visits, and the work that you do is substantial for what we compensate you for. And I know the compensation isn't why you do it, but I can't thank you enough personally. My family benefits is part of that 11 million that comes in for disability and retirement. So it's just, truly, I've said it before, you are a treasure here in the county, and I hope you're here to carry us through 2045. I know, but I mean, and as that time comes, honestly, I'm not asking for any more than if you haven't started thinking about transition, if we can fund somebody to assist at some point in the future, so service is uninterrupted, please don't hesitate to start talking with Sean and I about that, or Sean if it's after I leave. But thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much.
All righty. righty. I guess that was open for discussion. Is there any public comment on that item? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much, Rick. Next, we have discussion regarding the flock camera license plate readers. I'm going to turn this over to Dallas. He's kind of been leading the discussions on these.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to bring everybody up to date on the investigation, or not really investigation, but a deeper dive into the flock cameras and how they operate. I want to, we have had a couple different work sessions already, one with the Sheriff's Office and then a subsequent one with the Sheriff's Office and a representative from flock, which I really appreciated. Unfortunately, I was sick at that one. Commissioner Richardson relayed some of the questions that I had, and Sheriff Norton was kind enough to relay the contact information at flock to me. So as I go into, I just want to report, I've got some questions out to the flock company. I have not received those answers back yet, but kind of wanted just to bring everybody up to date on the questions that I've had and where we're going with it. So first off, I want to say the questions I have nothing to do with our local law enforcement. I believe Sheriff Norton and our Sheriff's Department would use this data appropriately and in the right way. As it is when you have questions, it's with people you don't know, and we know the Sheriff and trust what he would do with this data. So in no way am any of the questions that I bring up intended to cast aspersions on our Sheriff's Office, but to just make sure that we are also protecting our citizens as well. So basically, for those of you who are not aware, flock cameras are deployed throughout the county, particularly at entrances to the county lines at our license plate readers that can give a notification to our Sheriff's Office if one of those license plates happen to be on a hot list, whether it be a stolen car, an Amber Alert that's been put out, and that sort of thing. And those are admirable events that we want to be aware of. So, but my question is concerning about how it could be misused. And so I have relayed some questions to Mr. Solomon with the flock safety. I was a little tardy in getting those to him. It was just yesterday, but I will definitely report back. But this kind of outlines some of my questions so the other commissioners and the folks in the room can understand some of my concerns. Within the flock camera system, it retains the data, the picture that's taken of a vehicle that goes by, of the bumper, the back end of the vehicle with that license plate. It retains it for 30 days. And that was concerning to me. That's a long time, in my opinion, for a data retention. So I have asked Mr. Solomon if the system can be altered in any way to retain data retention range of our choosing, such as even just down to 2 or 3 days, so that an immediate hit on that list could be addressed immediately and it's not being retained for a long period of time. And I also relayed to him, if I understood correctly from the phone call, that Flock does not store the data. So even though they're using the cameras, they're more facilitating this. The data, the pictures are being uploaded into a cloud system. And so I asked him what would be the scenario if when there is a security breach within that system. We know that we see oftentimes, probably all of you have had a note from the hospital or from an insurance company, a bank of a breach. And so I'm curious what the scenario would be. Who's notified, how soon that notification would take place, what kind of remedies would be in place to try and correct and stop that. Also wanted to confirm from our call that there are search parameters that could be entered to enter for a specific plate, or for a certain make or model of a car, or a certain color, or a certain bumper sticker. Need clarification on how detailed a search can be put out for a specific vehicle above and beyond just what the license plate is reading. And particularly with the bumper stickers, I believe in the call, and just wanting clarification from Mr. Solomon, that there was a bumper sticker, that the system would capture that there was a bumper sticker on their car, but not what it said. And so I just need clarification on that, because it seems to me if it's able to read letters and numbers off of a license plate, it should be able to be programmed to at least give a good idea of reading some sort of a license plate or a bumper sticker and what it says, and with the help of AI now to be able to identify a specific bumper sticker. So I've asked for quite a bit of specific clarification on how those bumper stickers would be used. Within our contract, it says in item 2.4.1 that evidence gathering that could be used in a lawful criminal investigation by the appropriate government agency, that they can use that. And so my question is that just solely for our sheriff's department, or are there other agencies that are notified as a vehicle leaves our county? Who determines what the appropriate government agency is that gets this information? And is federal law enforcement included as an appropriate government agency? And so I've also asked then, given the history that we've seen of federal law enforcement being associated with Twitter and Facebook, and the information flow back between those entities and federal law enforcement, if Flock employs any previous or current employees of any federal law enforcement or intelligence agency. And so to me, that's one of the major concerns of how this data is being used. As I understand it, this is a private party, and there is no audit, there's no verification that the data is being automatically dumped after 30 days. We're kind of taking their word for it, and I just wanted to verify that there was no outside agency or anything that's monitoring this. As often happens with new technologies, it goes faster than what oversight and management can take place. And so I was just curious if there was a way that we could be assured that that is being dumped after 30 days by an auditing process. We also had a question if a camera is angled to catch a taller vehicle, like a lifted truck. We have some of those out here in the county. Is there a possibility that a sedan that's lower would show maybe a silhouette of people or even a face if it was turned in the right direction of that window? We're still trying to protect people's privacy here. I had a question on how many false hits does the system flag as a vehicle that is on the hot list that shouldn't be there, or also if there's someone driving a vehicle that is on the hot list that it's not necessarily that person that they're looking for. I asked about who the third-party hosting is it hosting the web interface referred to in 2.1 of the contract, and what the wireless cell phone provider is that's being used to upload the data. I asked that the explanation of 4.1 in the contract that says proprietary information of the agency include non-public data provided by agency to Flock or collected by Flock via the Flock hardware or agency hardware to enable the provision of services, which includes but not limited to the geolocation information and environmental data collected by sensors. So I'm curious what they mean by non-public data and what geolocation and environmental data means. Also in 4.1 in the contract, there's a whole last part of paragraph that starts with for clarity. It talks about that they are able to use that data if there's a good faith reason to share with other law enforcement agencies for any type of prevention and enforcement. And so my question is about what agencies, just to our local sheriff office, or state law enforcement, federal law enforcement. And so the question has a little also a nuance to it, because I believe in the call he talked to us that they did not have access to our data, but yet here in the contract it talks about that they're able to share that data. So I don't know how they're able to share data that they don't have access to. So I needed some clarification on that. In the contract in 4.5, entitled Aggregated Data, it talks about non-exclusive worldwide perpetual royalty-free right to use and distribute this data for enhancing the system and training purposes. And I just wondered who and how is that data determined to be used. I'm a little leery of having our Elbert County citizens' data being transmitted worldwide for use of training. I asked if they could supply a list of other counties, municipalities, HOAs, and private businesses that have installed flock cameras in Colorado. And when you look at their website for flock, they really have a push to have these cameras placed everywhere, not just in municipalities and cities and public areas, but also in areas where there's HOAs, in private businesses. And so my question with that, does that, when a license plate goes through there, does that hit the hot list and that goes throughout for our law enforcement, even though it was a hit in the HOA? And what kind of protections are in place for citizens with that information being made available to HOAs and private businesses? And the last question I had, there's several different options involved with the flock system. What we have currently is just taking the picture, I understand, of the license plate, but there are also options within the system of audio and video options. And so I had a question if there was an upgrade to be done, if that can be done remotely, or does it have to be reconfigured in person? I assume it's remotely, but I wanted to get that information. So there's always a balance when we're talking about people's personal liberty versus protection, and we have to find out that balance. These were questions I had. I was able to view the movie entitled Police State last night from Dinesh D'Souza. It was quite troubling to think about the amount of data that the federal government is collecting on all of us and how it is being used. And so that certainly plays into what I'm fearful with this system as well. But I'm looking forward to hearing back from Mr. Solomon on the answers to this question. And I will certainly give an update when we hear those responses.
Grant, did you have anything?
Thanks for doing that investigation, because those are questions that need to be answered. And I look forward to hearing the answers to the specific questions that you've raised.
No, I appreciate you taking this on. And Tim, I know we've had a couple of sessions, and I really appreciate the openness and your internal policies, how you use it. I agree with Dallas. The concern isn't at all with our local law enforcement. I mean, I know, honestly, budgetarily, we struggle to have enough deputies to do the day-to-day things. We don't have somebody sitting or people to sit and monitor all our citizens, but the answers do start getting a little fuzzy when, again, we were told in the last session from the rep from Flock that data isn't shared unless the sheriff approves of it. But then they talk about in good faith sharing data with other agencies. So there's some gray, and it seems inconsistent, and I think until we get some consistency, it's important to kind of keep asking these questions. And as Dallas said, I mean, we're kind of balancing individual liberties, the needs of law enforcement, and honestly budgetary requirements as well as we look at this. So, Tim, did you have anything you'd like to bring out at this point? I mean, we're not making any decisions on anything today, just, yeah.
Tim Norton, Elbert County Sheriff. And I'm not going to rehash everything that we've had in the last two, but this is a very important investigative tool for not only the Sheriff's Department, but law enforcement nationwide. I did contact, after our last meeting that we had, I did contact one of the head prosecutors for the 18th Judicial, and under the 18th Judicial, with all the counties involved, they all have the flock camera systems, and they said that they noticed a decrease in crime, but with more felony filings. So basically, Joe Blow, who steals a car, he may steal 5 in a week. Right now, he's only getting 1 and he's getting caught. So those other 4, we don't have victims of stolen property. Just to reiterate, Commissioner Schroeder, there is no facial pictures taken out whatsoever. And maybe I can answer your question on the distance. The way the cameras are set back from the roadway and the angle that they they are able to catch a license plate, whether it's a high-rise vehicle or a low-rise vehicle. You will have the picture of the rear end of that vehicle. That is all. And I believe in our last study, our session was, they cannot pick up letters off bumper stickers or whatever. It just tells you there's a bumper sticker on the left side of the bumper. It doesn't tell you what it was, right? And I just want, my last thing, and I'll leave it, is I just want to reassure you and the citizens of the county, I would never sell that information. It's a picture of a license plate. If a law enforcement agency wants it, they can get it another way and they can do their own homework on it. But I'm the only one in the county that can release that information, and I would never, ever release that information. I'll end at that.
I appreciate that, Tim. And again, I think, total confidence on this side, and I think from our citizens in you and your deputies, this is really just concerns in general about I guess the easiest way to say it, it feels icky to know that people are taking photos of you as you move throughout doing your day-to-day business. And I know it's prevalent with Ring cameras on people's homes and, you know, the cameras on ATMs and everything else. There's a proliferation of at least observation of what's going on. So just more due diligence on our side. Did we have anybody in the room that wanted to make a comment or wanted to add to the conversation?
I just have some questions that I'd like answered.
Yeah, if you could.
My hair done, and I started hearing talk about meth being in this county as a problem, and that human trafficking is a big problem in Kiowa specifically. And when I go into Walmart or Safeway, I'm always concerned when I see somebody with a weapon. Like I saw this 20-something carrying in a gun, walking through Walmart. I immediately start looking for exits. So I'm just wondering, do public places also have cameras? And how much do I have to worry about that stuff, I guess?
All right. I'm not sure we'll get into answers on that. I'm sure Tim can probably talk to you a little bit on just general things. I don't want to stray into, I think, probably not appropriate to talk about in terms of crime prevention, who has cameras, who doesn't, but certainly the Walmart does, but yeah, again, I think the sheriff's the best person to talk about the appropriate level of information that should be shared, but I know he's very open in discussing crime stats and trends, and we could tee that up in the future if you'd like, but I'd encourage you to chat with the sheriff at the end of the meeting. Thanks. That concludes our discussion items for the day. For action today, we have two items. One is to consider the approval of update to the Elbert County Emergency Operations Plan. Shane, I know this is the outcome of quite a bit of work and updates and coordination with others. So I know what we had in the packet and what was published was kind of the last draft for discussion. So if you could kind of run through what's been resolved there. I don't think we have the final, but we could certainly go final if we've covered everything, or slip it in just as consent on the next meeting. But I know getting this out to everybody else for signature is important, and there's some maybe not urgency, but it's time sensitive to get it in place. So thanks.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Shane Pines, Director of the Office of Emergency Management. With regards to the emergency operations plan that was released to you all in early October for discussion, a variety of other entities were also in receipt of this emergency operations plan, including community and municipal leadership, emergency responders, the Communications Authority for Elbert County, a variety of elected officials and county departments, a number of sit-downs and offering of a multitude of other sit-downs were had taken place with regards to this EOP to address any concerns, conflicts, questions. Minimal edits were done to the document, no conflicts to actually address. With concern to the tail end of the document and the primary adjustments pertaining to the county were the declarations. So a sit-down took place, of course, with regards to the state of emergency and the disaster declaration. The language was made consistent from the previous emergency operations plan adoption so that the succession and that the authorities are consistent between a state of emergency declaration and a disaster declaration for the county. That's to simplify things and make things consistent. Furthermore, to address the differences between a state of emergency and a disaster declaration, that language primarily translates down from the federal and the state level governments. They use those a majority of the time. However, those options were provided down to us, and how they utilize them is, here's an example. An actual disaster may not be in effect. However, they have realized that a number of resources have been utilized or expected to be utilized, and so they want to ensure that they have access to appropriate emergency funding. So they use that as a mechanism for discernment at those levels of government. We might be able to address the same for our policies pending any situations or hazards we could anticipate where we would want to activate a state of emergency versus a disaster declaration. That's all I have.
The draft has been circulated and commented on by all the partner agencies and organizations that we have. I know the initial draft was published earlier when we had this on discussion, and again, draft for this meeting. Have we received any public comment, or have you received anything?
I've not received any public comment with regards to it. No, sir.
Okay, and then the changes that were in the final version that we were provided but weren't in the packet reflect everything that we discussed earlier?
Yes, sir. They do, and I'm happy to make sure that you have a copy of that. Yes, sir.
Any questions or comments?
No, I appreciate the clarification on the state of emergency versus a local disaster declaration. And a lot of work went into this, and anytime we have an event that would rise to this level, it's important to have a plan in place, and the different municipalities, agencies across the county working on the same page. So thank you for working on this.
So for the timing of publication, I know you were shooting for this month. If I guess if we do not approve today, then the next target is early December. Does that put you behind? And
No, sir. No, sir, it doesn't. So long as the document is formally adopted prior to the end of this year, considerations were taken into effect in the event we have a bad winter storm, and that would prevent us from being able to formally push through this resolution. Our state partners look for this to be adopted prior to the end of this year.
okay. Yeah, I think with that, then we'll just take one last shot and publish the final and on consent at our next meeting. And if we have a disaster prior to that, we'll likely have the opportunity for an emergency meeting, and we can put it into place at that point. But we'll go with hope as our method and take it on consent at the next meeting, and if you guys don't object. Okay, thank you much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All righty, so next item, and actually if there was any comment on that in the room. Okay, seeing none. Our next action item is consideration of the minutes from October 25th.
The minutes of October 25th as published had a couple of little corrections in them. Is that correct? Have those corrections been made?
Yes, they've been made and republished.
Okay. Then I move that we approve the October 25th, 23 meeting minutes as adjusted.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the adjusted minutes for the October 25th, 2023 meeting, and I assume dispense with the reading.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I meant to include that. I just recommend we dispense with the reading of those minutes.
Your second still?
Still second, yeah.
Okay. So all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All righty. Board planning, certainly we'll take the EOP on consent at the next meeting. I believe that is teed up also as our budget approval. I think as most folks have seen on the news, there's a special legislative session that starts this Friday that we'll see what the outcome is. I don't see it changing what we've looked at for expenditures for the year that was presented at the public hearing, but it may alter revenues slightly. So whether we're seeing more revenue or we're using more of fund balance, we'll have to do those calculations once we know what the legislature comes up with, if they come up with anything, and what the governor signs, if anything. So it's kind of uncharted territory, but I'm pretty confident that regardless, we will have a budget approved and in place before the first of the year. So we can continue services to our citizens. Anything you'd like to have added for the agenda? Yourself, Dallas? Do you want to, let's look at Flock one more time? Yeah. Okay. So we'll put Flock on the agenda one more time and hopefully button up some things. So with that, we do have nothing less for the morning, but this afternoon at 1 p.m. We do have 3 applications to hear in land use, 2 final plats and a minor PUD amendment. So it's 10:07. We're in recess, and we will reconvene at 1 p.m. at this location. Thank you all for coming out.